My name's Ralph Palmer. I'm a character animator, animation director, animation person, both from film, interactive, video games, and so on and so forth.
It's the Shepherd's Journal. This journal is the key to finding the lost continent of Atlantis.
I come from 2D originally, back in the 70s, and I've always had a keen interest in what's coming around the corner next. So I learned how to do CG way back in the beginning when CG was first getting going. When I was at Disney, I used to go and borrow people's computers that were working on Dinosaur, Disney's first CG film. And luckily I knew those guys. I was working at the time on Atlantis, my last 2D movie. So I went and I used to go at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to their offices and use their computers until I had to get in my car, drive down Buena Vista Boulevard to Disney Studio, the main studio, and go into my office and animate Milo Thatch for Atlantis. I did that for 3 or 4 months, and I got my chops up in CG. Then I did a test for the studio for Disney and got hired as a CG animator.
When the Disney characters you love come together, it's magic.
Then I started with Mickey's PhilharMagic. I did a picture there, and I did, I think after Mickey's PhilharMagic, I left Disney and went to Rhythm and Hues, and that's when I did Garfield, Scooby-Doo. I did some commercials in Hollywood, but all this time when I was doing CG, I had my eye on games because I felt that that was the future, really the future's in interactivity. And I didn't really know how big they were. And an agent had reached out to me from Europe. He had heard about me, had seen my work or something, and he said, could I represent you in Europe? And I said, and he said, well, I mostly do video games. And I said, hallelujah, you bet you can. And of course he brought me Lionhead actually. They were talking to me first. And then he called me and he said, well, listen, I know we're talking with Lionhead. He said, but would you talk to EA? They've said they're interested. And I said, yes, of course. And it wound up being, the first place I did go was EA. When I was little, my dad gave me a 35mm camera where I could take pictures. Plus, he let me use his 8mm camera. So I'm a little kid running around making movies of just anything. At school, I'd be animating in the sides of the pages of my books, my science books. Dogs running up ladders and jumping off into a pool of water and the water would spread out. Just stuff. My books were all covered in little bits of animation. I went to an arts and science school and I was heading towards marine biology because I was very interested in the oceans. But I failed chemistry in grade 13, I think it was chemistry. And I had to have chemistry. I didn't get a good enough mark in chemistry to get into university. And a friend of mine said, hey man, I'm going out to Sheridan College. They got a new course out there called animation. And I'm like, get out of here. Animation? What do you mean animation? Yeah, you can study animation. And I couldn't believe it. They had a guy that used to work at Disney, had set up an animation course. It was brand new. I studied animation all the way through, got my diploma, started animation, working in animation in 1977, and just kept going.
I'll have whatever he's having.
There was no animation industry. There was Disney. There was Disney. There was an animation culture. There was an animation culture in Russia, in Japan, in some of the Eastern European countries, and in France, of course. There was an animation culture that goes way back. Ours, of course, was the American culture. In Canada, we had the Canadian Film Board, and they just helped struggling artists push sand around glass and do experimental stuff, which is cool. But I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in commercial, you know, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, basically, and any of the Disney things. Back in the 70s, there wasn't much work, right? I mean, my first job, I was animating little tiny hand-drawn trains that move around on a track for the Canadian Nuclear Energy Board, for just some little thing for some company. And that was my job. It wasn't character animation. The best thing to do is keep your eyes and ears open. and it will present itself to you. Stuff happens. Ultimately, there's still old things that are at play. Learn how to draw. Shapes, form, all of this stuff, that's still historical. We're still the old system that Leonardo used, the master and the students. That's how this is done. That's how I learned. I try to make sure that my students at least are aware the importance of drawing, of base in color, shapes, all these things. They know that stuff. I teach that stuff. And it's tough. They're surprised. They're almost universally surprised at how tough it is to do the basics. I view it the same as science. It is science. It's not chemistry, it's science. It's another type of science. It's communication science. It's technology science. It's a lot of this stuff all wrapped up together. I am not afraid to read and research. I research crazy, silly stuff I research.
I will find Atlantis on my own. I mean, if I have to rent a rowboat.
This is exactly what I wanted to hear. But forget the rowboat, son. We'll travel in style.
Got to tell a story. If you're just running around shooting stuff, you're going to fall asleep very quick. It'll be like, I don't need to see another tree with a close-up. Nope, don't want to see that. Don't want to look at the car going by again and again and again, unless I know that there's the bad guys in the car behind that car, and he's chasing that car, but the good guys are coming up on him in that car. Then I want to know. It's the story.
Oh my God. No one is stupid enough to believe that.
Who's the ugly old broad?
It is always going to be the story. What's going to happen next? And I got to care about it. I got to care about the characters. I got to care what happens next. If there's no story there, yet there's no point. Study story, study characters, story and characters. Both. They're both. You can't separate them. If you have a story, who are we going to follow in the story? We're going to follow the characters. Yeah, right. And if you have some characters, if they're just characters standing around, there's no story. Who cares? There's the story and the characters. Look at a lot of stuff. I'm a prodigious movie watcher, book reader. I'm a fan of some books. I don't know if this sounds weird, but I have some books that I've read 5 times. Read, and then read some more. And go read some scripts. You can get scripts at libraries. You can get them online. I have a whole pile of scripts at home, you know. You gotta have the good ones, you know. I've got Good Will Hunting. I could read that over and over again. Yeah, you have to do your research. Don't be afraid to, you know, you need a lot of body to work from. The more you have of that body, the more equipped you're going to be able to tell a story. I do some work every day, 7 days a week. Might only be a little bit, but I'll still do some work. Even if it's, I read a little thing, or I do a little sketch, or I fix something that I had.
We have a visitor.
Things like that. Eat things like us as snacks.
You have to be careful. You have to know how to let stuff go. You know, you think you'd want to hang on to it forever until it's absolutely perfect, but that's not the way it works. One of the reasons you're there is that they can count on you for handing it in. Here's the date. You agree to a date. Executive producer or directors, you got to please them 100%. You know, if there's something they don't like, you got to fix it. You got to make sure that it's, and on time too. The responsibility of what it means to be a pro. You want your executive producer and your directors to be able to sleep at night. So they don't have to worry. They just know Ralph's got it. We're good to go. We know it's going to be fine. He'll have it on Thursday. That has huge value to people. It's great work, and it's done on time. And something that you just have to learn. You train yourself along the way. So you start when you're young, you can get there sooner. It took me a while to get there.